I'm here for the CMO spotlight, and with me is Rod Johnson, who's the co-founder and chief marketing officer for Black and Bold Coffee. Welcome, Rod.
Thank you for having me, Joe. Good to chat with you.
Absolutely. So, Black and Bold Coffee is a coffee roaster based out of Des Moines, Iowa, of all places. So, I wonder if you could start by telling us a little bit about the company, how it came to be. I know you and your partner co-founded the company, and then tell us a little bit more about what your role is within the company. How have you divided the responsibilities there?
Sure. So we are a coffee roastery, as you mentioned, located in Des Moines, Iowa. We've been around now for almost 4 years, about 3.5 to be more exact, as we opened our virtual doors, our e-commerce store back in June of 2018. Our business has seen many iterations. We started in the garage, burning beans and getting the fire department called on us, to now occupying a 20,000 commercial facility that allows us to meet the demand that now exists for our products. Real people who had an interest in coffee and decided to take that affinity and build a business around it. My role, it's hard to really hone in on what I actually contribute because it's so much. We're a small business, right? We all do a little bit of everything. And depending on what the needs are at any given moment, I'll fill in. But I guess most formally, I am responsible for being the voice of our business and making sure that our story is told in an authentic way that ultimately resonates with our consumers. Tack on a little bit of HR work, with a little bit of personnel management, but I would say that fully encompasses what I do here for the business. Hoping to grow that and expand as we grow, but at least that kind of puts a bow on what my role is. While my business partner does a little bit of everything else. He's more of the mad scientist coming up with the different formulas for the beans for our respective roasts, as well as like a little bit of sales and managing those different distribution channels. So that's how we've delineated our respective responsibilities.
Now, I understand you weren't originally a coffee drinker, but you've come over to coffee as your preferred beverage. And I know that this wasn't your background and your history. You were in, I think, fundraising for universities and such. So tell me about how your career pivoted over and you decided to join with your partner to do a coffee business.
Yeah. So to your first point, I was not a coffee drinker prior to this. I mean, I could probably count on both hands how many times I actually drank coffee before launching the brand. I would drink it for like all-nighters in college or like road trips or like just things that when you need a caffeine boost. I was more of a latte guy. Right, I was just like a shot of espresso in my chai tea latte from Starbucks. Like that was the extent of my coffee experience. But speaking of college and all-nighters, that's essentially how I got my start into my fundraising career. So I needed a summer job. I didn't want to go home between my sophomore and junior year, and I saw a flyer around the campus of Indiana University, which is where I completed my undergrad, that said, "Hey, come make $9 an hour talking to your fellow alumni." And I was like, I like talking. I don't want to go back home. Let me go ahead and see what this job's about. And ultimately, it was working in a call center, interrupting people's dinners, asking them to give back to their alma mater for the sake of scholarship, technology upgrades, et cetera, et cetera. And I just built a career off of that, finding ways to connect to people around these shared values, around this shared experience, and getting them or reintroducing them to the magic that existed when they were going through their undergraduate studies, and just progressed up that ladder, from behind the scenes as a strategist to being more of a frontline fundraiser and, building rapport and establishing relationship with those that could really make a major impact on these respective academic and healthcare institutions. Immediately prior to starting the business, the last role that I held was the assistant dean for the School of Business for a small private liberal arts college out west. And while fun, Really enjoyed the many conversations and being able to tell the story of those respective institutions. I didn't really feel connected to the end result. I felt that there was a much bigger issue that needed to be addressed. And I wanted to use the skills that I had developed over the last 15 years to address those issues.
Excellent. So what was the Des Moines connection? What was the turning point that said, let's start a business, let's roast coffee and sell coffee?
Sure. So my business partner and I grew up in Gary, Indiana. And while I stayed home and graduated from Indiana University, my business partner went off to University of Northern Iowa, where he earned his undergraduate degree. There, he met his wife, and after living in a few places, given his professional career, they had their first child and decided to move back home, which is where his wife's originally from, to be closer to family. So that's the Des Moines connection. And it just so happened that Pernell and I decided to start this business while he was growing roots here in Des Moines. So, it was more so happenstance as opposed to being deliberate. But I would say that has worked to our advantage because it's not a crowded space. I mean, Des Moines is not known for coffee. There's known for many other crops, corn in particular, but not coffee. And that gives us an advantage as the community has really, co-opted our story and helped to elevate our brand and what we're trying to accomplish.
But so what compelled him and you to pick coffee? And then how did you end? He said, hey, come join me in Des Moines. Let's start a coffee company. I mean, like
kind of like that, a couple other conversations in between, but that was essentially the premise of it. So we knew that we were plateauing in our respective corporate careers. Me on the nonprofit side, he on the for-profit side. We were like, all right, we want to do something different that is a bit more fulfilling and new, right? As opposed to the rinse and repeat that we had grown accustomed to. So we were already exploring the idea of entrepreneurism. It just was a matter in what direction. It dawned on us that we should just look at our own daily habits. Let's look at things that we are doing already. What are things that we like? They say the same thing like with picking stocks, right? They say, hey, what stock should you buy? Well, look in your pocket. You have an Apple Watch. All right. Well, you're driving this type of car. Those are probably the stocks that you should invest in. And that was a similar approach that we took with starting our business. So we realized that we were spending a lot of time in coffee shops. Now, while I wasn't a coffee drinker, still spent a fair amount of time in coffee shops, given the travel required of my work, and just kind of fell in love with the coffee shop culture and the community that's built around coffee, and decided that, all right, let's take this affinity and see what it would be like to actually be the manufacturers of this product as opposed to just the consumers.
Very cool. So I'm curious if there's a piece of advice that you wish that you'd gotten early in your career, or maybe a piece of advice you give to young people that are just beginning out in their career.
Oh gosh, prioritize time management. That is key. It's something that I still work on. I try to make sure that I'm, intentional about where I'm spending my time, how much time I'm spending on any given task. And when you're taking the route that I took, where you have your 9 to 5 to fund your 5 to 9, time management is pivotal. It's the most critical skill that you could have. And I'll be honest that I certainly have. There were some moments where my time management skills weren't up to par, and I was feeling it, right? Getting behind on certain deadlines, or just not performing to the best of my ability. And that was a learning that I would certainly wish that I had much sooner, but I'm glad I went through it the way that I did, because now I truly, truly understand the importance of time management.
Yep. So I believe that everybody has a superpower, and I'm curious what you feel, or maybe you've been told your superpower is.
Well, I've been told that I have the superpower of like connectivity and building rapport and just being congenial with people, regardless of the crowd. I tend to I can find my place in that crowd, right? And while still being authentic to myself. And I think that being able to prioritize other people's interests and finding a way to relate them to my own has really resulted in some great relationships that I've been able to build over time. And that's really what life is all about, is building and maintaining and sustaining relationships. And that has come very natural to me. And I'm very grateful because I have lifelong friends, and my business partner is my friend of over 20 years, right?
Wow.
So I really appreciate that being something that just has come innate to me.
That's great. So just to get a little bit more into the business before we jump to some other questions, I know, well, first of all, from a marketing standpoint, I know you all have grown quite a bit since the very beginning. I know I don't think this is where we discovered you, but we saw you in some Target ads on TV, and you were featured there. And I know you're on the shelves of Target and other places. So talk a little bit about the journey and the marketing journey from the beginning to kind of where you sit today.
Sure. So as I mentioned, we just started with our e-commerce store right back in June, and our go-to-market strategy was nailing that down first, but then looking at retail distribution as the next go-to-market, as the next leg of that go-to-market strategy. That was part of our business plan. We essentially want to make quality specialty beverages more accessible. That has been an experience that was guardianed by the coffee shops that in any respective neighborhoods. And if you don't live next to a coffee shop, well, then you're relegated to just what's on your shelves. And that typically was not specialty coffee.
Yeah.
And so it makes it easier for us to really fulfill our business plan by partnering with big box stores like Target to, again, to give our customers or potential customers choice at shelf, the choice to choose a different tiered product, so to speak. So from the garage, we were able to secure some POs from Target, given my business partner's experience in the retail merchandising space. It certainly wasn't a layup. We had a lot of work that we had to do in order to be ready for that influx of attention, influx of orders, that influx of productivity. And we took our time with it. We were approached much earlier than when we said yes to actually participate in the programs in those various retailers. But we knew that we weren't ready. We knew that the branding wasn't in a place that would resonate with the casual consumer. We knew that we had to get some things in order as far as our operations are concerned. And I'm grateful that we took that path, because we weren't putting the cart before the horse, so to speak.
Well, and speaking of brand, you all have a beautiful brand. I think you've done a particularly really nice job. And I was telling you before we hit record that I'm a tea drinker. So I have some of your product here. This one's lemon ginger, and this one is turmeric spice. And I've got my black and bold mug that I'm drinking it from. But I noticed you all are a very mission focused company too. I mean, very prominently on the package, 5% for our youth. And I know that's important to your business, is giving back. And I think the mission has driven a lot of the decisions that you've made as a business. So can you tell us a little bit about why you're mission focused and what that mission is?
Absolutely.
Part of the business.
There are many reasons why people rock with our brand. It could be one, that they just love coffee, right?
Yeah.
The product that we sell draws the
good coffee. Yeah.
Good coffee, right? It could be that it's a Black owned business and people get to shop their affinities. And that's something that is of importance to them. And speaking of affinities, it's the fact that we give back, and we're very bullish about how important that is to us. So we knew that from the very beginning that we wanted to have some notion of social impact embedded at the core of what we did, because that's what was lacking in our professional careers and in communities that from which we come. There is a lack of reciprocity between for-profit businesses and the communities of their consumers. So we position our business to be an example of prioritizing purpose as well as profit. And we essentially bring that to life by giving a portion of our proceeds to organizations that support youth in need. In fact, annually, we give 5% of our profits to about 15 organizations that are scattered across America that focus on different aspects of the human endeavor for kids.
Mhm.
So it could be eradicating food insecurities or youth homelessness. It could be just providing general mentorship for the public school system or the kids of the public school system, or teaching kids the importance of coding, or just giving them hardware like computers. These organizations are keenly focused on helping our most vulnerable demographic, which are kids. So we know that in the grand scheme of things, it's 5%. It's not like we are we keep that in context, but the goal is to show that you can have a business and it doesn't have to be only focused on the bottom line. It can be focused on giving back to those that have contributed to your business, essentially.
Yeah, but I love what you said about you're giving people multiple reasons to buy your coffee. It may just be that they love good coffee or good tea. It may be that they want to buy from a Black-owned business. It may be that they believe in the cause that you're contributing to, and they feel good about supporting your brand because they know that 5% of your proceeds are going to go towards those nonprofits. So I appreciate that it's a way we're in business to make money ultimately, but at the end of the day, it is important to give back to and help those that need our support. So
there's a heightened focus on conscious consumerism, right? I mean, people are voting with their dollars every day, and there's been more talk in just the general society around, all right, what does this company stand for? Like, is this about something more than just a product that they sell? Do they align with me on a personal level? And I think those are going to be the businesses that are most successful in the future, including and especially if they're authentic. Now, performative allyship to these different causes, people are going to see right through it. But if you are authentic and truly genuine about supporting XYZ issue, I think consumers, especially those that are conscious in their decisions, are going to gravitate towards those type of businesses.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to shift to just marketing for a minute in terms of, we're hopefully emerging from this global pandemic, and we've all been dealing with for a long time. But what is your biggest challenge that you're facing as a marketer, one that's responsible for the voice of the business, as you said? What's the biggest challenge other than just the challenges that we all are facing of a pandemic?
Yeah, twofold. One, it's carving out a voice in a very crowded space. I mean, coffee is a commodity, right? So it's you can get it any and everywhere, right? And it's you have legacy brands.
There's gas station coffee. There's grocery store instant coffee. There's coffee shop coffee, and where do you find your space?
Yeah. And so that we try to, carve that out, try to figure that out. And that's in trying to get people to adopt one, brewing coffee at home, right? Because people, every example that you just mentioned, somebody else is doing it. The gas station, somebody else is doing it. The coffee shop, going to work, going to school, like typically somebody else is brewing it. We're trying to retrain the customer that you can have that same coffee shop experience in the comfort of your own home. So that has been a bit of a challenge, but to our advantage, the pandemic has made it easier for people to digest that because they couldn't go to their coffee shops anymore. They were forced to make their coffee at home. So it's a little bit of give and take with that. And then also a challenge has been, it's carving out the voice. The challenge has been to make sure that we partner with people for the right reasons, and make sure that there's authenticity on the other side of those negotiations, that people are not looking to just piggyback on whatever momentum that we have built without any genuine interest in furthering our cause. And so they're just kind of sifting through that noise to make sure that our marketing efforts, including and especially when we partner with other people, are that they're mutually shared as far as authenticity is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you used the word authentic a couple of times just now. So I'm curious, what values do you want to demonstrate as a leader? Or what values do you demand from somebody that would work for Black and Bold?
Attention to detail was probably one of the biggest values that I have. I mean, you don't have to be the smartest, fastest, strongest, but I care about doing a good job and doing a good job the first time around. And I want to surround myself with people who prioritize that as well. I'm not saying that you're going to be batting 1,000, right? Like, we all make mistakes, but at least you're showing up trying to not make mistakes, right? That's what's most important to me. And then just, consistency. That's another value that I try to embody, and I'm hoping that those that work with me and for the brand also take heed to that as well.
Great. I'm curious if you ever work with marketing agencies, and if so, what does that look like for you?
We've worked with a couple marketing agencies in many different capacities. Some have been responsible for providing our social media experience, or they were responsible for curating our digital experience. Others have been responsible for content creation and our buying strategy from a paid media perspective. So we've had some experiences, some good and bad experiences with agencies. And in fact, the one that we're working with right now is focused on those latter two points that I mentioned: content creation and our paid media buying.
Are there certain disciplines that you feel like, envision as Black and Bold grows even bigger? Are there certain marketing disciplines that you feel we need to own in-house? We should really be great at these in-house. And are there certain ones you feel we should almost always outsource this because we don't ever need to keep that in-house?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. I don't think that we ever need to have content creators on staff. I think that that's something that we can outsource. Someone who has a studio, like, let the creators create. I say that very often. Like, I don't need to get in the way. That doesn't necessarily need to be in-house, essentially. I believe that we can get by with tapping somebody else to, take pictures, take videos, whatever, create the assets on our behalf. What we should retain would be like social media management, because of how much connectivity that you can have with your consumers. I would want that to come from the business. I would want someone to, curate that experience, to be the voice from the brand, as opposed to teaching someone how to speak on behalf of the brand. There are certain cultural cues, there are certain industry expertise that needs to be communicated to our ecosystem. And I would like for us to always be able to influence that, as opposed to teaching someone and getting them up to speed.
Makes sense. Is there a marketing program or campaign or something that you tried that taught you a great deal because it was a huge failure and it taught you something you needed to learn, or it was a huge success and you want to try to emulate that in the future?
Yeah, I would say this one is somewhere in between. So you may or may not know that we are official licensees of the NBA. And last year, we announced that partnership with the release of a medium roast coffee entitled The Warm Up. It had 2 packaging experiences to commemorate the Eastern and the Western conferences. You had the different teams, and the packaging, in my opinion, was top notch. And we were, I think, overly dependent upon the NBA being a household name, that we didn't have the proper rollout plan for it, and that we didn't have the proper support to really make that thing sing. Now, obviously, it's a multi-year agreement, and we have some time to make up, or we have the opportunity to make up for lost time. But when I go back to the initial launch, we could have done that much differently to really capitalize on what could have been a moment. We thought that we were Beyonce, right? I don't know how familiar you are with Beyonce's music, but like 8 years ago, she released a surprise album, self-titled surprise album, and it was platinum, right? No rollout, no marketing plan beyond it. She just dropped it and
like
boom.
magic.
Now she sold 1 million copies in the weekend. We were like, this is the NBA. We're going to partner. People have an appetite for this type of collaboration. And it wasn't a dud, but it didn't go platinum in the weekend. And so that was a reminder to not rest on our laurels, so to speak, and make sure that we put forth our due diligence to make these opportunities really hum.
Well, your analogy is a good one too, because we see the platinum, multi-platinum album. We don't see the hours and hours and hours of work that went into putting that together and performing and, being ready for that and setting the stage for that. And so, you're fortunate that you get an opportunity because it's a multi-year deal to figure, do a little bit of building the plane while you fly it, so to speak.
Yeah, that's real.
So I have some kind of fun questions that have nothing to do with marketing. The first is there a quote or a movie or a book or a team or a band or anything like that that really inspires you, and why?
Oh gosh, when you expand it to music, then I go, I had an answer. Now
you can pick more than one.
All right, I'll stick with a quote that stuck with me. So with dating back to my undergrad years, during that call center job, I had a manager at the time that was he also prioritized attention to detail. And he said this, and I will never forget it. He said, if you mind the minutes, the hours will take care of themselves. I was like, oh man. That's a bar. Like that makes, if you just do the little things, and it's nothing new or transformative. It's stuff that we've heard all of the time, but I just like the way that he phrased that, because it was related to time. And I thought that was a great way to bring it home. So just doing the small things, doing the building blocks, or focusing on the building blocks, ultimately will culminate into the big picture that you're painting, essentially. You mentioned a couple other things like a band that expired, not a band, but an artist. And so speaking of Beyonce, her husband, Sean Jay-Z Carter, is a big inspiration to me. One, I just really love his music, but beyond that, I love the business moves that he's made post music career, and how intentional he's been with those moves. Like, for example, he's working with the NFL and making sure that they have more diversity in their halftime shows, which was a criticism of the NFL before, or some of the work that he's doing to advocate for policy change and eradicating some laws that, over criminalize communities of color and Black people in particular. So I just really appreciate that this person who society wrote off because of the decisions that he had to make, given the environment that he grew up in, has just done a complete 180, but still has been authentic. It's still his North Star hasn't changed per se. He's just gone about accomplishing those goals in a real dynamic fashion.
I love that. Also, I want you to be my time management coach, because I know that you would be a good one for that.
I got you.
So outside of your family, where do you find joy? Do you have hobby or anything? And where do you find joy outside of work, outside of family?
Yeah. I have, so I grew up, I was an athlete. I was a 3-sport athlete, and just kind of got away from that after college. But I picked back up my love for basketball. And so when I'm on the basketball court, it's just liberating, hearing the sound of the net, like the smell of the hardwood, the feel of the leather. It's a place where I can really escape. And then also burn some calories in the process. So, picking that back up has been very beneficial for me this year.
Nice. Is there a brand that you admire, and what is it that you really admire about the brand?
There are a couple of brands. And
Not in your industry.
Yeah, sure. I would say, Nike. I just love Nike. I love everything that Nike does. They are a marketing company that sells shoes and
Yeah,
sells like
right.
athletic apparel. They're not really focused on the product itself. It's like, how do they tell the story? Like, you feel as though you can run as fast as Usain Bolt or jump as high as LeBron after watching a Nike commercial, or, hearing them, just being immersed in whatever their marketing efforts are. So I love how progressive they are.
Mhm.
They don't shy away from speaking about issues, and they don't punish their athletes for speaking about those issues,
Right.
which I think is even more important. They don't necessarily have to share in those values, but they're not getting in the way of somebody else expressing those values. And I think
Absolutely.
that's really cool. And then Apple is another marketing company that sells a product, right? They have people wrapped around blocks to get the new iPhone, and it's not really new. It's the same one, just
Yeah.
slightly tweaked. But the way that they've been able to market and make you feel a sense of FOMO if you don't have it,
Right.
I think is genius. And I'm really looking forward to some of the innovation that I know will be released when we start thinking about like VR and like the metaverse. And we know that Apple's going to eventually compete in the smart car
Yeah.
realm. So I'm curious to know what their angle would be in marketing those new products, marketing that innovation.
I love it. Well, we, as a part of these conversations, we've been doing these CMO spotlights for, I don't know, it's been at least 2 years. And we always give a Black and Bold gift card to the person that we interview. So I'm still trying to figure out what the right thing to send to you as a little thank you gift is Rod. But anyway, Rod Johnson is the co-founder and the chief marketing officer for Black and Bold Coffee. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.